I was in the 86th Infantry Division, right, 342nd Regiment of the 86th, and also 3rd Battalion of the 342nd. Then we went through amphibious training at Morro Bay, and they issued us all tropical gear and uniforms, so we were set to go over to the South Pacific someplace. We had no idea, but we knew we were going to the Pacific. That canceled out the minute they announced that the Germans had attacked across the Ardennes and Battle of the Bulge. They shipped us immediately by train in our suntents to the East Coast outside of Boston, issued us winter uniforms, winter clothes, put us on board ship, and you had time to maybe whistle, and we were on our way to Europe. We went alone in a ship called the Gripsholm, which was a sister ship of the Kungsholm. Those big Swedish liners. We did not make the D-Day landings, but we landed in just south of where they landed in a place called Le Havre, France. And we went in a Camp Lucky Strike. It was a tent camp, and that was for just gathering. It was a gathering point, really. And then they put us on 40 and 8s, those little rail cars. We went up north through Belgium and Holland, and we went into the line in combat at a place called Aachen. Then they moved us down to Cologne, and we were on the line there, and one night the 82nd Airborne infiltrated through our line into our positions. We pulled out of those positions as they went in. And we had been under orders. The Krauts were across the river waving lanterns and everything else, and we were ordered not to fire. Under no circumstances were we to fire from our positions, because they wanted they didn't want our positions known before the crossing. But when the 82nd come in, that was one of the things that they did. The minute they come in, of course, some Krauts stand out there waving a lantern. He got buried with bullets. The 82nd didn't give about that. They just opened fire. We went south, went through Cologne. We went south to Bonn. That's where we crossed the Rhine. The minute we crossed the river Rhine, we went north, not south. We went up into the Ruhr pocket, and we fought in places called Ludenscheid. Yeah, we had combat there in that area in the Ruhr. And I think one of the things that they pinned a medal on us for was we took more captives than any other unit, single unit. We took a lot of Krauts. We supplied the ammunition for the battalion. Wherever the units were, we had to get people to them with ammunition. And of course, most of the time that was under fire. If there was a job to be done with demolitions, like we'd use Bangalore torpedoes when the guys would run into minefields. We'd string together a bunch of Bangalores and shoot them out there and blow them up, and they'd blow up all the mines near them. And that would make a path for the guys to go across the minefield. And a couple times where we had to use our bayonets to test the ground, and find mines. Then after the Ruhr, we turned south and went from Germany into Czechoslovakia. We were with First Army at Hodges, First Army, and at one time, we were connected with the Third, and that was in that period of time. In fact, I met Patton unknowingly. We had taken an ammunition supply depot of the Germans, picked up some uniforms, some heavy-duty jackets, and they were camouflage jackets, and weapons. I had the jacket on, and we were walking along this road about dusk. Here comes this Jeep, and it flashed by, and then we, of course, could see the pearl-handled pistols and the bright shiny helmet, and I thought, oh. Anyway, he turned around, and they came back, and he stepped out of his Jeep, and he said, "What's your name, soldier?" And I said, "Private J.C. Halpenny," because if I'd told him sergeant, I'd have been a private anyway. And he had a set of eyes on him that looked, oh, Jesus, they just bore right through you. But anyway, the three of us got by. He told us to dump the non-TO equipment, get into our own uniforms, and throw away any weapons that were not issued. And said, "Don't let me catch you like this again." And took off. I never will forget it.
You're watching The Veterans Project here on the History Channel. You're watching The Veterans Project here on the History Channel.
Kept going south, and we hit towns like Litmouth and Ingolstadt, places like that. And we came to the Danube River. We had to cross the Danube. That's where I lucked out. They had assigned my platoon to operate the pontoon boats to take the units across, the original rifle units, and told us we had to, secure a bridgehead as soon as we could across the river. And so in the process of taking the troops across, and of course it was night, we were under pretty heavy fire. And a lot of my unit, a lot of my guys ducked for cover, which was the smart thing to do. Instead of being smart, I stayed there and operated the pontoon boats and got the rest of the rifle regiment over, and came back. Well, they issued me a Bronze Star for that. During that period of time, they sent me to Paris, which I really objected to. Anyway, me and the I Company regiment, or I Company's First Sergeant Piersga, and I went to Paris. And we checked in a place called the Red Cross Headquarters Hotel, right off the Montmartre in Paris. And we were there for about 7-8 days. We had a lot of fun. Yeah, we kept going south, but back over into Austria. And we fought a lot of, skirmishes. We were at Obertrum, Austria. And that was in late April. And there was already conversation about the war, about being over. And we were on a recon, myself, my driver, and we had a personnel carrier. We were going on this reconnaissance. About that time, we smelled something. And we were in the forest, and it was goddamn the smell I ever smelled in my life. But about a mile later, we come on a fence, a big enclosure, a high fence, and there's a whole bunch of people milling around inside, and they were prisoners. And so I told Wagner, my driver, I said, bust in the fence, just go drive right through that gate, and which was locked, and he just rolled over it. And we got inside, and here was a whole bunch of Jewish people, and other people were prisoners in the place. There was a mess. It stunk to high heaven. And you could see why. There's a pit, big lye pit, not too far from the front end of that place. It was full of dead bodies. This is the most miserable thing I've ever gone through in my life. It's hard for me to talk about. I tried to forget it for a lot of years. Anyway, it was really something. Those poor people were starved to death. There were some of the guys jumped out and went through, opened some barracks, and there were people laying in these stacked cribs. All you could see was eyes and bones. It was really terrible. All these guys were crowding around our weapons carrier, our personnel carrier, and jabbering away. So I told Perlman, I said, "Fine, what the hell are they talking about?" Well, they had taken the camp commander, who was, I'm supposing, like a major in our army, with the German army, and they wanted him, and he was trying to surrender, and he was taking his ceremonial dagger, handing it to me to surrender it to me. And I said, "Well, what's going on?" And Perlman says, "Well, this guy was the camp commander, and these people want him." And I said, "Oh, you know, this is anyway." From since then, the decision was very hard. I told him, I said, "F you, man." I gave him to him, and they took him about a block away from where we were parked and beat him to death. And I have just had nightmares ever since, because I actually let them have him. Whether I should have or shouldn't have, I, to this day, don't know. I've never forgotten that. I tried to. But it was a short time after that, in a nice early May, we went into Overtram. And we were taking up quarters in Overtram, and of course the first thing you do when you get in one of them towns is you get the Burgermeister, tell him you want all the citizens to bring all their weapons, all their cameras, everything, to the central square and pile them in a pile, no matter what they were, knives, swords, shotguns, rifles, whatever. And they bring them over and pile them in a pile, and we just ring primacord around it, pour gasoline on it and set fire to it, and then get the primacord going and blow them all to hell and clean up any weapons. And then we told them if we found anybody with a weapon, he was dead. And of course, at that time, we really didn't give a shit, because we had orders to kill any prisoner of war that had a soul book that said Schutzstaffel. That's SS. Primary Death's Head SS and Waffen SS. We just took them out in the woods. I didn't personally, but guys took them out and shot them. Right, we wouldn't take them prisoners. SS guys had shot all our boys up there at Malmedy, prisoners. Then we were given orders, no SS prisoners. So when we took a guy, they were dumb. I'll tell you, they held on to them soul books. Well, it's an identification book, and we demand that the minute we had them under control, we'd say, give us your soul book, which they did. And if one of them said Waffen SS, well, what it said was Schutzstaffel. And if it said Schutzstaffel in there, they were gone.
You're watching The Veterans Project here on the History Channel. You're watching The Veterans Project here on the History Channel.
About, I don't know, when was it? About 10th of May, I think, or 11th, somewhere in there, we got word the war had ended, which was terrific. Then they shipped us from there to a place called Mannheim. The war had been over then for about a week. We were in Mannheim, which was across the river from Heidelberg. And of course, naturally, we found out there was a brewery in Heidelberg. So I'd ship 2 or 3 guys in a Jeep, get them over, and I'd say, go to that brewery, wherever the hell it is, and bring us a keg of beer, which they would. And we had some good beer. And then I went on one of the excursions, and it was the brewery was in the mountains or foothills, and this brewery was built right into the dang mountain. You get in an elevator and go down 7 floors to get real cold beer. Further down you went, the colder the beer. So anyway, that was quite a thrill to have real fresh cold beer. Well, we left Mannheim, and they put us back in the same camp in France at Camp Lucky Strike. And from there, they put us in trucks and took us to Le Havre, where we were boarding ship. We were boarding ship in Le Havre, and that's when an officer came into the compartment and asked for me, and And he said, come with me. And so I went, and we went out onto the dock, got off the ship, and down on the dock, and here's about half a platoon of guys lined up. And what the hell, they're going to shoot us? I didn't know what the hell they were doing. And here comes General Mulaski, our division commander. They're handing out medals. That's when I got my Bronze Star. I hadn't had any idea they were going to give me a Bronze Star. We went back then to the States, and we had a 30-day convalescent leave, which was wonderful. I got to go home. Then they shipped us to Camp Gruber, Oklahoma. And so we figured, well, so what's going to happen? Well, hell, they were still fighting in the South Pacific. So they said, well, I think we'll go and join the boys in the South Pacific. I said, you got to be me. And, of course, we were all very, hell, what the hell are you talking about, for Christ's sake? We'd had plenty of combat in Europe. As far as I was concerned, I don't need no more combat. But anyway, they sent us to the Pacific. We wound up landing at Lingayen Gulf in the Philippines. And again, tent camps and all that kind of crap. And they used us in conjunction with a bunch of Filipino soldiers. We were going up into the hills on Luzon, cleaning up hot spots where Japanese holdouts were. And these guys didn't, they either didn't know or didn't care. The war was over. And we lost 2 officers up around Baguio. Near 2 weeks after the war ended in the Pacific in August. And these poor guys got shot up by Jap holdouts. But anyway, we were up there for a while cleaning out them Jap holdouts, which was a job, boys. It's one of the dirtiest jobs I was ever involved in. We finally got out of there, and they were going to ship us to Mindanao. They wanted me to go to Paris, to a officers' school in Paris. And I looked at my company commander. Let's see, who was, I can't remember who was that time. But anyway, I said, you got to be kidding me. You think I want to be an officer? I've seen too goddamn many officers shot over here. I do not want to be an officer. So I didn't. At that point, I boarded ship in Manila and came back to the States through San Francisco. Boy, that was quite a festival affair there. They had a whole bunch of fireboats out there around the ship and squirting hoses all over hell. It was quite a festive deal. And of course, coming in about 300 miles west of San Francisco, we had hit a pretty severe storm. And we're on board a ship that was not a big ship. It was like a Liberty ship. I think the son of a had a flat bottom. Oh, we rolled and tossed for quite a while. And all of us were sick practically. I only got sick once, and that was at a boarding ship in Le Havre after we drank a bunch of Calvados. We made it to San Francisco, and they put us through all that training that they had to see that we got training before we went back into the civilian life, because first guy that walked up to give you a bad time, if you weren't trained, you'd knock him on his butt. Things like that they didn't want us to do, of course. I was technically discharged in Camp Logan, Colorado. And then I came home. Yeah, I would like to dedicate this dissertation to my kids, my grandkids, and my great-grandkids.